Well, our next guest has lived in Big Sky for 20 years, and he's taught 18 years, fourth grade, and 2 years of 6 through 12. His title is a mouthful. Lead Facilitator of Creativity and Innovation for the Big Sky School District. Hi, JJ.
Hi, Joe.
Your title sounds like something out of Calvin and Hobbes.
Ironically, I used to draw Calvin and Hobbes when I was a teenager. It was my favorite thing to draw.
Yeah, did you really? Well, yeah, it's sort of like Supreme Dictator and High Pumbaa. What does your title mean?
I think it's a fancy way of saying I run a design classroom and I want my students to be creative and innovative as much as they possibly can, which we're all are innovators and creators. It's just tapping into that part of our brains and our souls that helps me do that. So I just facilitate it. I try to be that, like a river guide or a backpacking guide or something more like that, and push them along, nudge them along when needed, but not stand at the front of the room and tell them what they need. So
Gotcha. So yeah, so you're not really innovating anything, you're just inspiring innovation.
Yes, perfect.
Gotcha. So everyone, you'll notice where I am. I don't know if you'll recognize this. This is Jeremy Harder's classroom. JJ, are you still in the gym?
Nope, Joe. I've got my tape measure out and I'm right here.
6 foot distance.
6 foot.
What do you think about that? That is something that we were asked to do, and we are actually doing it. We're taking it very seriously. JJ, so how did the last 2 months of online learning go for you, from your perspective?
Good question. I'm not sure if I have a really accurate answer because one thing before I get started though is our district, was able to pull this off nearly 2 days after schools were shut down. So I've got to commend the school board and administration and our tech team and all the teachers and staff here to just get it up and running. I mean, we busted it out coming out of the gates hot. I mean, there are some schools that never even got back to where we started. So it was cool. The first couple of weeks were neat and different. And, then it was a little bumpy getting student engagement, teacher engagement. But we're wrapping things up this next week here. So we're excited to close this chapter and reflect on what worked, what didn't work. How can we change possibly the face of education? And if there's any time better than now, we can take what the needs of our students are and try to, mesh that into our current education system.
Yeah, sure. And, obviously online learning is for the students. I'd like to know what you learned during this time.
I learned a couple things. A lot of it was personal stuff. I learned that I can't plan way ahead, which I think is beneficial. Allow things to grow organically in the classroom, also in my life. Another thing that happened was I saw my 10-year-old Elijah mature and become so independent that there were days that he was working on his classwork and I wasn't sure if he was in the house or not. And so that was really cool to know that I could leave him in there and he went and crushed his work. So that was really neat to watch that. The other thing I learned is sometimes I would take things personally when students would not hand in projects. And I've learned over the last 8-9 weeks that don't do that. Don't take it personally. Everybody's going through this in a different way, and some of us deal with it differently. And to bring some grace into how we treat ourselves, and then that trickles down to how we treat our students, because I have no idea what they're going through. And it's one of those periods where you allow things to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're talking about the kids. Do you miss them?
Of course. I mean, you know, my classroom, my philosophy since, you know, when I first started was building relationships. And I think 70% of a classroom is building a relationship with a student, which, you know, builds on trust. And when they trust you and they like you, and you treat them like an individual, you get a lot greater response and engagement from them than you would otherwise. So it's hard to engage, you know, doing what we're doing right now. It's a challenge to not be physically near people and feel what they're going through and what the struggles are. I'm not sitting next to them while they're doing their projects for me and seeing their struggles or their excitement. So it's hard for me to reflect on that and you know, modify the project or the classroom. So you lose that aspect, and that's like so huge in education, is building those relationships. So it's been tough for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we were talking the other day, you know, both my parents are educators, and I have great respect for teachers, and it's a seriously difficult time you guys are all going through. What's the ideal situation look like for this school district this fall?
I'm trying not to think about that. Realistically, the ideal is we all come back and we're in the classroom and, you know, taking the things we've learned from this situation and improving on them, and, you know, maybe tapping into more of what our student needs are, whether that's academically, social, emotional. I think we could possibly trim the fat from some of our curriculum. I'm not talking about just BSSD, but in a global sense, if there are things that are no longer applicable to life, and we probably found that out in the last 9 weeks, then maybe we shed some of that. That would be ideal. Make learning completely authentic. Those are some things that, you know, I've been brainstorming around lately in my head and with some other groups of people, besides my admin and staff. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the ideal. What's the reality?
The reality is, it's too far ahead to know. The reality is, if the rut is running and PBR is running, well, those two pieces, then maybe school will be running. So the reality is, if we do have to modify something, you know, I hope it would be something that would involve, you know, part-time virtual, part-time face-to-face. You know, it's a great opportunity to move learning outdoors, because that seems to be a place where there's less contamination. And so maybe we go back to that learning style too. What I do know is that a lot of really cool things can come out of this. And I hope they do, whether we're face-to-face full-time or we're virtual.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of opportunity. We've seen a lot of businesses, a lot of groups, a lot of organizations, not only in Big Sky, but around the country, who are being innovative and creative and finding new ways to do things. You know, from an educator standpoint, what's one or two things that you think could change that might update, if not better, the education system?
I think, you know, going back to that trimming the fat stuff, if we find out there was things we couldn't teach virtually that weren't working, then maybe that wasn't applicable to everyone all the students who are at home, you know, trying to learn content. Maybe we get rid of some of that. There's an idea about standardized tests. You know, I'm not going to get too political about it, but I've never been a fan of it, and maybe we've realized that both through you know, equality and quality, that they aren't great predictors, and maybe we go back to realizing that it's performance in classroom, performance in and out of school, and you know, extracurricular stuff, and community organizations and things like that really tell a better picture of who a person is than a score on a card. And I say that because I was never a really good test taker, but I felt like I was a really good individual that helped out our community. So I think that's one thing. And I think the other thing has to be, you know, education is the one thing, when we design products, when we design buildings, when we design things, you know, the first thing we do is create empathy with our user, and we ask them, what do you want from this? What do you want from this product? What do you want from your house? What do you want from whatever it is? Education is the one place where we have yet to go and truly get an idea of our users and what they need and what they want. And it's sort of baffling at times that the people making decisions in some of the positions in government have never even spent a day in a classroom. I don't know. I think, but if we can touch on those things, trim some of the stuff that's not authentic, and really get in tune with what our students' needs are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a great answer. I want to get into something, you know, kind of serious, a little more on the operational side of teaching in a digital online environment. How do you deal with tardiness?
Yeah. Online? We give out detentions, virtual detentions. So we usually email the parents and tell them to lock them in a closet or in the room for 30 minutes. There's not really a way you can do that. You know, in my classes, my attendance has been, throughout the school, I should say, we were keeping track of attendance. And for, I'd say 6 weeks, it was really, really strong, actually stronger than some of our non-virtual or face-to-face. But things have been, you know, slowly, you know, becoming a little different data set. But, you know, it's also the end of the school year. So here you are dealing with the end of the school year, and now you're virtually doing it, and it's a challenge. But
Sure.
you know, what I feel most about is our senior class, who didn't get to do all the things all of us got to do. And so, you know, we are trying to create a really cool and unique experience here on Saturday for our graduates. So we're doing the best with what we have that we can deal with.
You know, in the last few minutes that we have left, just quickly, could you touch on the approach you guys are taking on Saturday for graduation? So
Saturday is going to look a little bit like a drive-in theater, a little bit like a spread out football cheering. Well, it's actually much matches some of our crowds on the weekends on our football games. Very spaced out. You know, our graduates will be there. There will be a virtual piece to it. I don't want to give that secret away in case there's anyone watching. And then there will be an actual face-to-face sort of humanistic part. So now you can only pray for weather, but we do have a backup plan in our gymnasium.
Gotcha. You know, back to, you know, the situation that's caused the school to close, the situation that we're all in right now, you know, this COVID-19 coronavirus, it isn't all bad. I mean, you started Radio Big Sky.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a way to get creative, get some positive things out. I don't know how many viewers we have, and I don't look at the analytics, but I did it selfishly to help me create some creative space. I did it, you know, as a way for our audience and our you know, people in Big Sky or wherever they are tuning in to see that there are things people are doing that are creative, and we're still having conversations and discussions about life and you know, important things and what we see that are coming out of this in a positive effect. So, and then there were some that were really fun, like you know, a group of the Big Sky Community Theater still want to be creative and still want to have fun. So some of our skits, you know, regardless of content, were based wholeheartedly on taking a light situation and looking at it differently.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a blast working with you through the theater. And then as we continue this sort of virtual skit type situation in the community, they're hilarious and it's a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
Well, I can tell you, it's kind of odd having you right next to me and looking into the screen, but I really appreciate you know, having you on. Love to hear, you know, just a couple things. We heard from a couple people about what they're grateful for. I'd love to hear what you're grateful for, what you're seeing in this community, and anything, you know, else that you'd like to touch on.
Well, I know there's people been on here for a while, so I have a hard time making things brief, but I'm going to say I'm grateful that we have been given the opportunity to look at our perspective of our world and the people around us, in big systems like ecology, smaller systems like education, and then our own little system that we wake up with every day. So through all those systems, I think we're gonna find some really cool stuff about ourselves and about human nature and everything else that's bigger than us. So thank you, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you coming down to my classroom.
Yeah, well, it's good to be back in the classroom again. You know, I figured maybe I could learn something this time.
Well, this time probably not, but maybe.
Well, again, thank you, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode of the Town Hall. And for our other panelists, thank you so much for being here. And we wanted to just give a shout out first to, our sponsors, Big Sky Chamber of Commerce and the Big Sky Town Center. We couldn't make these town halls happen without you. So thank you very much for that. And, in sort of the vein of the Chamber of Commerce in Town Center, we just want to let everybody know to continue shopping local. Get outside and support your local businesses, our restaurants, our shops. We're all in this together, and we all need each other to make this work, and we will get there. One last thing from Jeremy is he wants to chat about the summer camp real quick.
Real brief.
Real brief.
Those of you watching who are wondering what's going on with all the Big Sky area summer camps, we have been working together for shared guidelines and best practices for this summer. Please join us Friday on Facebook Live on the BSCO page at 5:30 to find out all that information. So join in and you will get your info about all the summer camps in Big Sky.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are fantastic. Appreciate you guys doing those. One last thing for everybody out there. We want to give a special shout out to the Lone Peak High School seniors graduating this Saturday. The class of 2020, congratulations. From EBS and the Outlaw Partners, I think it's backwards, but that's okay. You guys can read backwards. You've been educated by this guy. Thank you again for joining us, you guys. And yeah, we'll see you next time.